What's going on, guys? It's Tom here from Elevate Digital, and in this video I'm going to be giving you a comprehensive training on LinkedIn ads and really just covering everything you need to know to get the best possible results from your LinkedIn advertising campaign. So I'm going to be breaking this down into 6 sections. I'm going to be chaptering these sections as well, so if you do already know some of the bits in terms of the dashboard, how to navigate the dashboard, etc., feel free to skip on to a section that's more relevant to you, but if you're a complete beginner with LinkedIn ads, then be sure to watch this full video because there are going to be some bits that are absolutely going to be foundational and fundamental to your success with LinkedIn ads. So firstly, we're going to be going over the dashboard itself and just an overview of the dashboard as of 2022 and some of the new features that they've added in here. The second thing we're going to be going into is how to get started and some of the foundational bits that you will need to get set up, like your conversion tracking, setting up any custom audiences. The third thing we'll be doing is diving into the campaign creation itself, how to start creating these campaigns and what are the best types of campaigns to be using, from things like conversion campaigns to video views to lead gen forms and the advantages and disadvantages of them. The fourth thing is, and we'll come on to some of the reporting, what's useful for you to use and how to not get kind of analysis paralysis when it comes to looking at some of the numbers. The fifth thing we're going to come on to is campaign strategy. So if you're already somebody who's used LinkedIn ads and you're just looking to get a bit more kind of better results from your campaigns, I'm going to be showing you how we recently helped a client to take their cost per click from £30 down to £2 and also to cut their cost per acquisition in half as well. So you'll be sure to want to check that one out. As I say, if you are already familiar with a lot of the platform, just feel free to skip ahead to that section in the video using the chapters below and in the description. And then finally, I'll be showing you how you can use LinkedIn itself to spy on some of your competitors' ad campaigns, see what kind of things they're up to. Okay, so firstly, once you've created your new LinkedIn ad account, this is going to be the first screen that you'll see. So you'll have a kind of default campaign that is set up here within LinkedIn Ads Manager called New Campaign Group. At the top here, Campaign Performance, this is where you're going to be creating and setting up and monitoring most of your campaigns from. The testing tab is still relatively new. They haven't really fleshed this out yet. At the moment, there is one test available, but this may vary based on your location, and it gives you access to something called a brand lift test, which effectively allows you to just run a survey to people, like retargeting to people who have seen your ads, to say, do you remember seeing an ad by this company in the past couple of days, for example? And it's just a way for companies to be able to see, you know, are our ads standing out? Are they memorable? Are people actually recognizing the brand, you know, when they're seeing our ad? The next thing that you've got, which can be quite useful once you've got the LinkedIn Insight tag set up, which I'll be showing you how to do shortly, is you can actually see the demographics of people visiting your website. So this will give you a rundown to see, okay, what kind of job titles, what roles, what kind of people are coming through and visiting our website. The next thing you've got here is account assets. So this is going to be an important starting place. So this is where we'll be setting up our conversion tracking, which is absolutely essential because this is going to let us know, are people actually taking the actions we want them to take on our website, i.e. signing up as a lead, making a purchase, whatever that might be. Next thing is matched audiences. So this is where you're going to be able to create some custom audiences. So for example, if you want to retarget visitors who have been onto your website, or you want to retarget people who are following your company page, for example, or maybe even upload an existing contact list that you have to retarget those people on LinkedIn, you'll be able to do all of that within here. Block lists is basically a list of LinkedIn has a publisher network. So think of these as like blogs, media publications, news site that are all allowing LinkedIn to publish ads on their apps or their websites, whatever it might be. This is just a way for you to be able to block certain publishers if you don't want to appear on those. It's relatively advanced. I'm not going to go into that much in this video, so don't worry too much about that to begin with. Asset history just allows you, if you created a custom audience or an audience list, it just allows you to share them with other accounts, etc. But I wouldn't worry about that too much right now because again, that's relatively advanced. Landing pages is something relatively new that they've added. At the moment, it looks like it's specifically for kind of job ads and recruiters, etc. So I'm not going to be going into that in this video. And then lead gen forms are where you'll be able to create your lead gen campaigns and just setting the fields and the information that you want to gather from people. But we'll be coming onto that in more detail. So the next thing that you will need to do before you launch your campaigns is just make sure that you have your billing details set up, so you can access those from the ad account thing here. So you see billing center, and then you just put in your card details to make sure that LinkedIn has a card they can bill, and you can also give user access and things like that. So if you need to set people up on your team, you can go into manage access, and then you've got other things like your account details, your linked company page, etc. Now, in terms of the campaign performance dashboard, what you'll see up here is you've got 4 tabs across the top. So accounts is effectively going to show you any ad accounts that you either have access to or you're currently managing. So I'm not going to dive into this one just in respect of the privacy of our clients, but this is where if you've got multiple ad accounts, you would see all of those listed there. So I've just created a test account here for the purpose of this video. Campaign groups, the best way to think about campaign groups is this is effectively where you're going to be segmenting the campaigns that you're running. So how we set this up at the moment, and there's no real right or wrong way of doing this, it just depends on the structure, the size of your ad account, etc. But the way we structure this is by top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. I'll be coming into that in a bit more detail later in the video, but it's just a way for you to group individual campaigns. So you could do it by services, for example. It's entirely up to you how you want to organize the campaigns. Now, when you come onto the campaign screen itself, this is where you're going to be setting up the individual ad campaign. So the way to think about this, what comes into an ad campaign is going to be the audience that you're targeting, i.e. the job titles, the interest groups of audiences, and all that kind of stuff that we'll be getting into. Also the type of campaign. Is it an image campaign? Is it a video campaign? What type of campaign is it? And the other thing is the campaign objective as well. The final one you'll see here is ads, so pretty self-explanatory. So this is the actual ad itself, so where you've got the image, the video, the ad copy. So this is what people are going to be seeing in their feed, and then you can just switch between what view you're looking at with these tabs up here, and then you'll see them listed out in a list view with all of the relevant metrics. You've also got some filters and stuff in here, but I'll come on to that when we're talking more about reporting. Okay, so now that you're familiar with the LinkedIn dashboard, we're now going to want to set up the foundations of this first campaign. The most important thing we need to do here is by making sure we've got the LinkedIn Insight tag installed. So in order to do that, in fact, let me just shrink myself down a little bit here. We're going to go to Account Assets, and then we're going to go to Conversion Tracking. We then want to hover over this top tab here that says Data Sources, and then click on Install My Insight tag. You'll then see the tag appear here. So what we're going to do is go up to the top right where it says Manage Insight Tag, and then click on See Tag. Now this is where you'll be able to find the code itself that is going to go onto your website to allow you to accurately track when people are coming through to your site, to retarget your website visitors, and also to, most importantly, be able to track conversions that are taking place on your website. Now, I'm not going to show you in this video how to set this up and how to put this on your website. It's a very, very quick job to do. I'd suggest that if you're not familiar with how to set these things up, it's probably best to give it to your developer. You just click on this drop down up here that says I will install the tag. Click on copy, and then you can send this to your developer. They also have a thing where you can actually just email it to your inbox, and then you can forward that to your developer. Or if you're using something like Google Tag Manager, you can kind of set those up by following the steps and instructions that they have here. If you're also using a CMS like WordPress, they do have a number of plugins available that allow you to very easily install the LinkedIn Insight tag. So it's just going to depend on your level of technical ability, how comfortable you are with it. But again, if it's something you send to your developer, they'll be able to do it very, very quickly for you. So once you've done that, you're just going to click on Agree and Continue. So once that's all been set up, we're then going to click back on the Conversions tab here. We're then going to create our first conversion. So click Create Conversion, Online Conversion. And then here is where you're going to name the action that we want people to take on our website. So let's say we're a software company, we're looking to generate leads, or we're looking to get demo bookings for our platform. So in the name, I'm going to put in the action I want people to take. So book a demo, for example. I'm then going to click on the drop down here, and this is really just where you're specifying what type of conversion is this. So in this case, I'm just going to put lead. You can also set a value for this conversion. So if, for example, this is a paid trial or a paid sign up, or somebody's actually buying a product or buying a service on your website, you can put a value to that conversion in here. Now this section here is really important. So this is effectively your lead attribution window. So what this means, for example, with clicks, if I have clicked on an ad and then within a 30-day period, I have then come back to your website and signed up, LinkedIn is going to attribute that sign up to the ad that they have clicked on. So even if they didn't convert and sign up in that first interaction, if they've come back to your website later within 30 days or whatever window you set, LinkedIn is going to kind of take the credit as such for that conversion. Views works in a similar way, whereas if I have viewed or interacted with that ad in a certain window, then it's going to attribute it to that ad that they've last seen within that set time period. So 30 days and 7 days is fine for most people. This is really just going to come down to your business objectives, your preferences, how many other campaigns you've got running on different platforms, and how you find it best to attribute leads. I would say for most people, you can leave this as it is. Now with the attribution model, this is where it does become important to be mindful of what you're setting here. So LinkedIn gives you two options here at the moment. They give you last touch on each campaign and on last campaign. Now what this effectively means, let's say we've got this set to each campaign and we've got 3 campaigns set up and they've each got 1 ad in each campaign. And let's say somebody has seen within a 30-day window every one of those campaigns, they've clicked through to all of them, but it was on the 3rd campaign, the 3rd ad they'd seen, that they actually signed up on. If you have this set to last touch each campaign, LinkedIn is going to attribute a conversion to every one of those campaigns that that individual has clicked on. Now this can be useful from the perspective of being able to understand which campaigns are actually contributing toward a conversion. However, where it can get slightly messy is if you're trying to figure out where's that campaign come from, basically, where's that conversion, come from. So once that's all set up to your preferences, we're then going to click on next step. So we don't need to worry about doing this now. If you've got campaigns set up, this is where you can click to say, okay, we want to use this conversion on this specific campaign, but you can set this up at the campaign level anyway, so you don't need to worry about it right now. Okay, so this is where you're going to be telling LinkedIn what is the action that people have taken for this to result as a conversion. Okay, so the best way to do this, in my opinion, the easiest way is going to be on page load. So what this means is that if somebody visits a certain page on your website, this is then going to trigger as a conversion. So for example, let's say you've got a Booker demo page on your website, and after somebody has filled out that form, they then go through to a thank you page or a confirmation page. You will want to put in that confirmation page in here, and this is basically going to tell LinkedIn when somebody has hit this page, that means they have signed up, they have booked a demo, so I now want you to tell me that this person has converted. Now ideally you want this to be set to start with, and the reason being is because if you set it to equals, that means that any kind of parameters that might be on the end of that particular URL, it will ignore it. And what will very often happen is if someone clicks on a LinkedIn ad, LinkedIn has their own parameters that they add on to the end of that ad. Okay, so if somebody comes on there and you're using an exact URL, LinkedIn is effectively going to ignore it because it's not exact. So you're better off doing starts with. Okay, so let's say for example our we were software.com and the URL was software.com/thank you. So this is the page that people land on when they've booked a demo. So we're going to put that in there, and that's then saying to LinkedIn, okay, if somebody's hit this page, even if there is, LinkedIn's put its own code on the end of it, which it will, that it will still read that as a conversion. So once that's done, we're then going to click create. So once that's set up, you're then going to see your conversion here. So book a demo. We can create as many of these as we want depending on which stages people go through when they are signing up. You know, maybe it's that you've got an initial phase, which is a lead magnet, a demo. So all of your conversions are going to be set up in the same way. Now, you'll see here last signal received. So if you've just set up your LinkedIn Insight tag, you can do a test. So what you'll want to do is just visit the URL of that thank you page, of that confirmation page, whatever you have set as the conversion page URL that they go to, and then just make sure that this is set to active. Now, there can sometimes be a bit of a delay. I've seen this sometimes taking 24 to 48 hours to actually kick in and for LinkedIn to recognize somebody has been to that page. So you might just want to test it over a couple of days and check back in here, and this should eventually turn to a green button here, and it should say active when it is actually tracking visitors off that page. So just keep an eye out for that and make sure that it is tracking correctly, because it might mean, if it's not, that your LinkedIn Insight tag hasn't been set up properly. Now, once we've got our LinkedIn Insight tag installed, we've set up our initial conversion. Something else that's worth doing is going to be to set up some audiences, okay? So if we click on matched audiences under account assets and we then click create audience, you'll see we've got a list of different options here. So I'm just going to walk you through these. So for upload list, this is where you can upload a contact list that you've got. Maybe you've got a list of people that have signed up to your CRM, to your newsletter, etc., that you want to retarget. You can also retarget by company page, so people who follow or interact with your company page. You can retarget people who have interacted, engaged, or opted into a certain event that you have hosted on LinkedIn, people who have interacted with a lead gen form. So this would only be if you've already run some ads and you want to retarget people who have visited a lead gen form. And you can also retarget based on images, videos that people have engaged with, and also website visitors as well. Lookalike audience is something they've added in recently. If you're familiar with Facebook, you'll be familiar with this option. But a lookalike audience is where you can effectively say to LinkedIn, okay, take my website visitors audience that I've created and look at all the attributes and generate me an audience of people who look like that. So these can be quite effective when you're testing different audiences to try and reduce your cost per acquisition over time. We're not going to get into that in this video, but it is just something to be mindful of, that you can start creating those now. So the most common one that you'll probably want to do to begin with is to create a website visitor retargeting audience. So to do that, we're just going to click on website here, and we can then say website visitors, and I'll call this website visitors 90, because you'll see here that we can set this over a different time period. So it might be, you know, people who have been to the website over 180 days, people who have been in 60 days, 30 days. Now, the thing to be mindful of when you're setting this window for a retargeting audience, this is really going to vary from business to business. So if the product or service that you offer has a relatively long buying cycle, you'll probably want to and will be okay to have a relatively long, even the maximum retargeting window. However, if this is something that people typically make a decision on very quickly, so let's say you've got an e-commerce store and people just buy, there's a very, very short buying cycle, it's a relatively low value product or service, in that case, you'll probably want to have a smaller window, because there's a good chance that if people were on your website 180 days ago or 90 days ago, they've probably already made a decision now. But that's not a blanket case, okay? So it's really going to be up to you, and this is going to come down to continuous testing to see what audiences, what retargeting audiences you're getting the best results from. You can also specify particular pages that people have been to. So let's say you serve multiple different audiences and you're looking to retarget just a specific section of that. So maybe you have a B2B and a B2C section of the business. You'll just want to make sure that the page you're pulling the retargeting data from is the B2B specific section, so that you're only retargeting relevant people. Another thing that can be very useful to do here is if you have a blog, for example, and there's a particular blog you have that really signals good buyer intent, and that blog is getting a lot of traffic, it can be quite useful to have that as a dedicated audience. Because what this will allow you to do is to get very specific with the messaging in your ads, because you're targeting people based on what you know their pain points or interests are. So to give you an example of this, let's say we're an accounting firm and we have a blog that we know is getting, that we look in analytics, it's getting thousands of visitors a month. And this blog is about, how do I file my year-end accounts as a contractor, for example, okay? We could then use that as an audience. So we'd change the name up here to say, year-end accounts blog visits, 90 days, right? So we'd then put that URL for that blog in here and then click on create. So what that means is we can retarget people who have specifically been onto that blog post, and we can retarget them with a very specific message because we know who they are, right? We know they're contractors and they're looking to find out how to file their year-end accounts. Whereas if we just target everyone who's been to our website, that's going to be a very broad audience. So this is where you can get very strategic in terms of the kind of people that you are retargeting. But if you don't have a massive amount of traffic coming through to your website at the moment, or you're a relatively new business or startup, you'll probably just want to do a generic retargeting audience to begin with, in which case you just put in your standard URL. So you put that in here and you'll then click on create. So I'm just going to put in here, what did we call our last company? Software.com. So once that's been created, you'll see that then appears in your audience field, and you'll see here again, you've got a status. So this should start showing up. Again, it might take about 24 to 48 hours for you to start seeing things here. And you'll be able to see when that's active and it is actually receiving signals. Now it's worth bearing in mind when you're creating retargeting campaigns, LinkedIn and pretty much all platforms will have a certain limitation as to how many people you need to have in that audience before it can start retargeting them. So you'll see like an audience count here as well. So at the moment it's saying less than 300, and there's going to be a certain threshold. I think they're constantly changing this. I'm not sure what this is at the moment for website retargeting audiences, but it's just something to be mindful of, in that if you do set up campaigns, you might see a warning that shows to say you're not at the minimum threshold to be able to run these ads yet. Okay, so now that we've got our conversion tracking set up, we've set up our audiences, we've got the foundations in place now to begin running our campaigns and creating our first campaign. So what you want to do to create your first campaign is just click on the blue button up here and then click on create campaign. So if we click to create a new campaign, it will then start with the campaign group section. So you'll see here. So we can either put it into the default campaign group. I would suggest that you create a new one just for, just to keep it organized. So let's do create new group. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to give this a name. So like I said earlier, generally what we do is split this into top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. So I'm going to call this one TOF. We've already got one here, auto-populated TOF B2B campaign. Now underneath this, you've then just got the budget and schedule. So we're going to set run continuously from a start date. So you can have particular start and end dates if it's a time sensitive campaign. I would usually always suggest that you go for continuous campaigns though, because when you have start and end dates, it just doesn't really give LinkedIn, the algorithm, enough time to kind of learn what's working, who's clicking the ads, who's converting, and then find the right audience. So you're best off setting these up as continuous, but again, this is going to vary depending on your business model. Is it time sensitive or not? So that's just something to be mindful of there. So once that's done, you'll see our new campaign group here. So then we can just click on next, and this is going to take us now. So you'll see step 2, this is the campaign creation. So the first thing it's going to ask you is the objective. So this is really what is LinkedIn going to be optimizing for when it's looking for people to show these ads to. What do we want to achieve here? What do we want to get more of? So for example, brand awareness. For most businesses, I would suggest you don't touch brand awareness. But if you're a small business, you're looking to optimize for conversions, you want to be much more strategic in terms of how you're running these ads. So I'm just going to walk you through these one by one. So website visits, this basically means that LinkedIn is going to optimize to get you as many visits to your site as possible. Now, a caveat here and something to be mindful of, because we have seen this when looking at the data. Website visits, you will tend to find that you can get a lot of clicks and you might get cheaper cost per clicks, but the quality of those clicks is often questionable, because you'll see clicks, and if you look at the analytics, these visitors coming through to the site can have a very high bounce rate. So people might come onto the site for a couple of seconds and then just bounce off straight away. So what LinkedIn is going to be doing here is it's going to be finding people who tend to click on ads a lot. But that might not be what we want, right? We don't want people who just are compulsive clickers. We want people who are actually going to convert. So just really think about this and make sure that you're optimizing for the right events. Engagement is people who are most likely to, it's going to find people who are most likely to engage with your content. It can be useful to build up social proof on certain posts, or if you're looking to, like it says here, get more followers to your company page. Video views is a way to, and this actually is a very, very useful one, and I'll come on to this when we're talking more about strategy in the later part of this video, but this is where LinkedIn is going to optimize to get people to watch a video. So, you know, it's going to find people who are most likely to engage with and watch your video. Lead generation is where you have a form on LinkedIn, so it doesn't go to your website. This is a form on LinkedIn that pops up and people fill in their details on there. The good thing about this is that with LinkedIn forms, it's actually going to pull in the information from somebody's profile. So actually there's very little friction for that person to sign up as a lead, because they don't have to go to a website, they don't have to put in their details, because LinkedIn has pulled that all in. Now you can add in custom fields here, so if you want to also ask for their mobile number or you want to ask them a specific question, you can, but really the beauty of these campaigns comes in that I can click a button, click submit, and it's done, because LinkedIn's already pulled all the fields from my profile. So these can convert quite highly depending on the type of campaign that you're running. For example, if you're looking to get someone to sign up to a demo or book a demo, lead generation forms tend not to work very well at all, because there's just not enough context. If you're giving away like a free resource, like let's say it's a checklist or a guide that's going to be really helpful to me as an individual, they can work very well, right? Because it's a very quick and easy way for me to opt in. So it just depends on the level of kind of commitment or risk to that person. Like if you're asking them to book onto a sales call or book onto a demo, that's a relatively high commitment call to action. So lead gen forms tend not to work very well from that. You want to ideally drive people to a page and optimize for website conversions there instead. Reason being because that person just needs to see a bit more about like, why should I book a demo with you? Right? And you don't want the ad to ever be selling the product itself. The ad itself should really just be selling the click. Okay, so something to be mindful of there. You've also got job applicants here, so if you're using that for, you know, job applications, but that's not what we're going to be getting into for this video. So let's say, for example, we're doing website conversions here, okay? So as we come down, we've now picked our campaign objective. We've then got the demographic and audience filters. So we can choose, for example, the location. Now, something to be mindful of here, you can also set the parameters of this location targeting. So for example, are these people who have recently been to the UK, so they recently visited this location, or do you only want to target people who are permanently in this location? This is something that's really important to be mindful of, because Google do this as well on Google Ads, and it trips a lot of people up in that, you know, the default setting is people who have expressed an interest in a certain location, right? So you think you're targeting people just in the UK, but it's also people who are interested in the UK. Okay, so you always want to make sure that this is set up in the correct way for your business. So you can exclude locations, you can add in certain locations here, exclude buttons down here. So if there's particular locations you want to exclude, or if you just want to target a specific location, again, this is set to the UK by default, because that's where I am and that's where all the account settings are linked to. So now as we come down here, we've got the audience targeting. So if we click narrow, this is where LinkedIn really shines above other platforms, is in its ability to target not only employees of particular companies, but also of particular job titles and job roles. So the first tab you'll see here is audiences. So this is where we're going to be able to start using those retargeting audiences that we've created. So if we click on this and then click on, a website audience, you'll then see here's our audience in here, and it does say building still because it's still gathering that data. And actually, if we click on this, it will probably give us a warning or when we set up this campaign, just because we won't have anyone in here to begin with. So if we go back now to audiences again, so this is where you're going to set up any, lists that you've uploaded, retargeting audiences, lookalike audiences, etc. Audience attributes is where we can really start to kind of specify and tap into LinkedIn's database. So if we click company, for example, we can target particular company names, companies of certain revenue, and you can also stack these on top of each other as well. So we can actually have multiple different things. So for example, if we say company industries, we click on arts, we can tick as many of these boxes as we want, right? So you can have multiple layers stacked on top of each other. Now, if we click on job experience, this is where it gets very powerful because we can now start to target specific job roles. So let's say we're looking to target, I don't know, maybe engineers, for example, right? So if I type in engineer in here, you'll see we've got a whole bunch of roles. So what it's worth doing before you start creating your campaign is just brainstorming a list of who are all of the potential buyers or key influencers in this buying decision who we would want to be showing our ads to, and then just searching for them on LinkedIn and selecting them. LinkedIn will then start to give you a forecast up here as to how many people you could potentially reach with this campaign, like how many fall into this segment. It will then drill down further and say the kind of business functions that these job titles fall under. So it really gives you very granular insights into who you can reach, how many people you can reach. Now there's a ton of different targeting options on here, so I'm not going to go into all of them. So I'd suggest that you just play about with this and have a look at the different things you can do. For example, you can also target like member interest. So again, you could stack these on top of each other. So you could say, I want to target these particular job roles who are interested in, this particular thing, audio visual design. So it really does become very powerful, and you can target people on a very granular level. So let's just take an example here, and let's just use the engineer example and say we're going to target all of these engineer roles. Okay, so we've currently got an audience size of 850,000. Now the next thing we can do is we can actually exclude certain people from our audience, okay? So let's say, for example, these are the right job titles that we want to target, but we only want to target, or we generally only work with much larger businesses. Well, what we can do is we can actually exclude those smaller businesses. So if we then click back on audience attributes, click on company, and then go to company size, and we can say, okay, we want to get rid of all of the kind of sole traders, get rid of 2 to 10 employees, 11 to 50, even 50 to 200, and only target companies with 200 or more employees, right? So you'll see now our target audience size has come down, but if we know that we generally only deal with much larger businesses, this is just going to allow us to get much more specific when it comes to our targeting and ultimately get better results from our advertising. You then also have the option here to save this audience, so you can save this and just reuse this at a later stage if you want to come back in and replicate that. Now, as we come down, you're then going to have the ad format as well. So here is where we're going to be able to choose what type of ads we want to be running. So this is one thing to be mindful of with LinkedIn, is that everything is set. So from your audience to the conversion to the campaign objective to the ad format is all done at the campaign level. So you can't have a campaign with multiple different ads in it. You would have to create those as separate campaigns. So it is something to be mindful of. The other thing to be mindful of with LinkedIn is that the daily budget, there is a limit to the daily budget you can set at campaign level, which I believe is £8. So if I try and set this at 7, yeah, you'll see here daily budget needs to be at least £8. So it is important to be mindful of that when you're going in here and you're planning these campaigns, in terms of there is going to be a minimum budget. So let's say, for example, here we're going to do a single image ad. Now, LinkedIn Audience Network, I briefly touched on this earlier, but this is where it's going to also be showing your ads on their partner publisher sites like blogs, media publications, certain apps, for example. Now, these can tend to have lower conversions generally. If you're looking to do more like a video views campaigns, brand awareness, etc., it can be quite good to at least get people seeing your brand in multiple places, because that can help to build trust. However, it is worth being mindful of the fact that if you're looking mainly for conversions, sometimes conversions can be lower on the audience network, so it's something worth bearing in mind here, whether you want to leave that on or off. But you can experiment with those anyway. I'm going to leave this one off for now. So then we're going to set our daily budget in here. So let's say our daily budget is £100 a day, and you can then set the schedule here as well. So when do we want this to start from? So this is just going to start from today's date at the moment. Now, as we come further down, you'll see that you've got the bidding options here. I wouldn't suggest that you play about with these too much for the time being, especially when you're creating a new campaign. It does give you the ability to do manual bidding and set an actual bid for, you know, how much you're willing to pay for a click. But when you're starting out, I would suggest you just go for maximum delivery, because this is going to allow LinkedIn to kind of learn, optimize, and gather the data over time. If you go for manual bidding, you might find that you're struggling to actually get clicks and to get campaigns off the ground. So it's best to start with maximum delivery, just on the default setting when you're just starting out. Now, as you come down to the final section, you'll see conversion tracking here, and this is where we just tick the box that's relevant. So let's say, for example, we got multiple conversions, but we only want this campaign, we only want to track one particular action as the goal for this campaign, then we would just tick the relevant box. Okay, and then before we click on next here, I've just realized we haven't done a name for this. So we're going to want to name this campaign. So when it comes to the naming structure at the campaign level, what you want to be thinking about here is those three kind of core things that we spoke about. So what is the campaign objective? Who is the audience? And what's the ad format? So for example, here I might be typing in conversions, engineers 200 plus, and images. So what we're doing is when we're looking at our campaigns at a top level, we can easily see and segment, okay, so this campaign was targeting engineers, it was a conversion campaign, and we're using the image format. So if we then had another campaign which was a video format, we can easily kind of separate and segment between the two without having to dive in and try and figure out, which one was which. So we're then going to click on next, and you'll see here it just says your objective and ad format cannot be changed once you save. So that is something to be mindful of. Now, very, very worst case, it is quite easy to just duplicate a campaign, pause it, and then change the objective. So once that's been saved, we now need to create an ad. So if you've already created some content, you'll be able to browse your existing content here. This will also be able to pull through content you've already got on your LinkedIn page. But if you're starting from scratch, and we just want to click on the create new ad button. So here we want to create the name of the ad. So again, this is really just going to come down to the size of your campaign, the structure, how many campaigns you're creating, but it's just going to be whatever works best for you to be able to identify this ad. You know, I'm just going to call this, for example, image V1 for now. So introductory text is where we're going to put in the body copy of the ad. So I'm just going to type in, this is an ad. I'm then going to put in software.com as our URL. Now here's where we're going to upload an image for this ad. I'm just going to put a random image in here. And then we're going to put in the headline for this ad. So let's say, click this button. The description, you can put in description in here. So you can say that, we say this is the description. And the description usually comes under the headline here, but it will only appear on certain devices. Descriptions, I find, tend not to really make much difference to the ad campaign itself. The main things is going to be the creative, the body copy, and the headline as well. And then the next thing you can choose is the call to action. So let's say request demo, which then will appear here. So you'll see we've got click this button as the headline, pointing toward the call to action button here, and then this is where the body copy is going to be. Now when you're creating the ad itself, it's good to be mindful of a few things. One of the things you want to be thinking about is that when people see this ad in their feed, they're only generally going to see the first line before they have to click to see more. So it is worth being mindful of that, and you want to make sure that that first line is really where you're hooking people in and calling out your audience. So you either want to be speaking into a certain pain point that your audience might have and that they would resonate with, or asking them a certain question. So are you as such and such looking for XYZ desired outcome? Now, there are a number of different kind of formats and copywriting formats you can use when it comes to creating your ad copy. It's a bit outside the scope of this video, but just some things to be mindful of there. And also when it comes to the creative as well, you want to make sure that it's something that people is, one, going to grab people's attention, but two, that it is something very relevant so people understand what is this actually about. Because the last thing you want to do is go, too curiosity driven, and then you're just getting wasted clicks from people kind of coming through. So if you scroll up here, you can actually change the preview so we can see how this would look on desktop versus mobile as well. Now once that's all done, we're just going to click on the create button here. So now we're just going to click on next, and this will then just give us a summary to review of our campaign before we move forward with it. Now you see conversion tracking's actually got an X here by it, which is probably just because it's a warning because this conversion tracking hasn't actually shown as active yet. So it's kind of giving us an FYI on that. So once we've looked through the information, we've confirmed that we're happy with everything, we've set everything up correctly, we can launch the campaign. If you do want to come back to this later or you want to make some edits to it, you can click on save and exit. But if you're happy and you're ready to go, then you can click the launch campaign button. And you'll see here you've then got the option to either create another campaign or go back to the account overview. Cool, so now we've just set up our first campaign. So if we come back to campaign groups here, you'll see this is the campaign we set up. So top of funnel B2B campaign. We've then got the campaign objective, the audience, and the type of campaign it is as well. And if we then click on this, we'll then be able to see the ads we've got under this campaign. Now, when it comes to how many different campaigns and ads you should be running, because it's really important that you are testing different audiences, testing different ads, especially when you're doing a campaign for the first time. In terms of the number that you do, this is really going to vary depending on your budget. So as you saw earlier, there is a limit of campaigns where it has to be a minimum £8 per day budget. So I would say if you're in the range of around £1,000 or $1,000 per month of budget, you really want to be limiting this to about 3 campaigns and maximum 3 ads within those campaigns. If you go any more than that, it's going to dilute the budget too much, and you're just not going to get enough data to be able to make any real decisions. Another thing to be mindful of when you're testing different ad creatives and different ads themselves, you just want to make sure that you're not testing too many different elements at once. So for example here, maybe we're testing 2 different images to see which one works best, what gets the best click-through rate, what are we getting the best conversions from. If you have, a different image, a different headline, different copy, different call to action, it will become very difficult for you to know which one of those variables has actually resulted in the increase. So when you're starting out, you want to limit the amount of variables that you're testing, because otherwise it just becomes a bit of a nightmare. So my suggestion initially is that you're testing one thing at a time, right? So maybe you're testing different creatives, then maybe you test different body copy in the ad, then you test different headlines, because again, if you're testing too many things, it's just going to become very, very messy. Now, if you've got a much larger budget, you're spending, 10K plus a month, it will then become much easier for you to separate these out and chunk these out so that you can test lots and lots of different variables. But again, just something to be mindful of when you are on a limited budget. it is important to test, but you want to make sure that you're not testing too many things where, you know, it's going to take you years to actually gather enough data to get any conclusions from that test. Now, when it comes to monitoring the performance and results of these campaigns, LinkedIn does have a number of different views and filters that you can choose from. So performance is going to give you the generic kind of top level performance-based metrics. So things like your click-through rate, your cost per 1,000 impressions, your average cost per click, your conversions. Now you'll notice here you've got conversions and leads. This can sometimes trip people up. The difference between these two is the conversions are counting website conversions, whereas leads is counting lead gen forms. So if you're running a lead gen form campaign, this is where it will show. If you're running website and you're optimizing for website conversions on your campaign, this is where it will show. So that's just something to be mindful of there. You can change this as well. So let's say you're running video views or you're running a video in your campaign. You can get more insights into those campaigns. So how far are people watching the video through? What's the completion rate? So what percentage of people are actually completing the video? So this can just give you additional insights as to, you know, how effective is this video? Are people, you know, engaging with it? Are they resonating with it or not? Then you've got some ideas to work with in terms of how you could potentially improve it. The other thing you'll see up here is you've got demographics and performance charts. You can also export the data as well. So like we were saying, if you're running lots and lots of campaigns, you've got a very big budget, you can export the data to then start kind of querying that data over time. So performance chart will effectively allow you to drill down into the individual metrics like conversions, for example, see how they've been trending over time on a graph where you can set the time range up here. You've then also got demographics as well, which again, this can actually be quite useful because if you want to see, okay, is my ad actually reaching the right people? You can then drill down and see, okay, what job functions are we reaching? What job titles are we reaching? Companies, company size, etc. So you can see like, okay, what's the best click-through rate? So what industry is really resonating with this message? So this can actually be quite useful information. So if you see over time there's a certain industry, certain company size, and it's got a very, very high click-through rate, that might give you an indication of, okay, maybe we want to split this out into a separate campaign because these kind of companies seem to be really resonating with this message, but you'll just want to be mindful of, is that actually the right people we want to be targeting? Because if not, then maybe you need to go back to the drawing board with the ad itself and figure out, okay, how do we make this resonate more with the kind of people we actually want to get through to clicking on our campaigns. Now, coming on to campaign strategy, and this is really one of the most important things because what you'll find with LinkedIn is that it can, and you may have heard this before, it can be a very, very expensive platform to advertise on when you don't have the right structure in place. So for example, if you're going straight in with a conversion campaign, you will often see very, very high cost per clicks. Okay, because that's what everyone's doing. It's very saturated, and LinkedIn's going to charge you more for that action because it's going out to a cold audience a lot of the time and it's trying to find what's working here, what's not working. So if you've got a brand new account, you don't have much data, you're doing a conversions campaign, LinkedIn is literally starting from scratch and it's trying to figure out, well, who's going to convert? Who do I actually show these ads to? If you've got a bit more data, that cost per click will start coming down over time, and the overall cost per acquisitions, hopefully, if you've got the targeting right, will begin to come down over time. So that is something to be mindful of. However, there's a couple of things you can do to really change this. Like I mentioned earlier, we had a client that we worked with where we managed to cut the cost per click down to £2 from about £30 or £40 I think it's floating at before, and also to cut the cost per acquisitions in half. And the way we did that was by calling out the audience using video views campaigns. I think it's a very, very underutilized method to be able to call out your audience to begin with. And this is where the campaign structure and the campaign grouping would come into it. So for example, top of funnel, the way you want to be thinking about this is these are people who, you know, maybe they are aware of, they have a problem, but they don't necessarily, they're not looking for solutions at this stage. They don't necessarily know about your brand at this point. So what you want to be doing here is targeting them with a video views campaign and having that video as something that speaks into a particular pain point that these people might have or something they're going to be interested in. The key here is to meet them at their level and not start talking necessarily about your product or service or all the benefits of it. So to give you an example here, this is a campaign that we're running for a client at the moment in the employee benefits space. So we're targeting job titles, so for example, head of HR, benefits managers at companies who are going to be looking after this kind of thing, and hitting them with an ad that speaks directly into that particular thing. So struggling with employee benefits. So you see the video here, we've got a call out directly within the video itself. We've captioned it so that when people are scrolling through their feed, we're not just relying on the copy within the ad, but they instantly see this. So if this is something that they are struggling with, we're going to be able to grab their attention and get them to watch this video. Now with these videos, when we're doing video views campaigns at the top of funnel, we ideally want these videos to be as long as possible, so at least 30 seconds, ideally sometimes more toward the 2 to 3 minute mark. The reason being is because we actually want to disqualify people at this stage. So we only want people who are really interested in what we have to say here. Because what we're then going to do is we can then retarget people like I showed you earlier and create a custom audience of people who have watched 50 or 75% or more of those videos. Because what that then means is, okay, these people, if they've watched 50% or more of a 3-minute video, that person was really engaged with that topic. So we now know we're targeting the right job titles, and we've got people who resonate with the message that we're putting out there in the video. We then retarget them with a very specific conversion-based campaign. So this is where we're going to then be driving people toward a specific call to action, right? And then educating them about our product or service. This is where we would then have a middle of funnel campaign. So in terms of the structure, we might have top of funnel as the video views objective, and with a video, and then we have the middle of funnel being a website conversion objective using an image, for example, just so that we're kind of mixing it up and diversifying in terms of what people are seeing. Now what you'll find is when you do that, we can get view throughs for about 2p. Okay, so 2p view on that video. So when you think about that, you can build out those audiences very, very, very quickly and build up a real audience of people who are engaged with that ad and then retarget them with a very specific and relevant message. And then what happens here, because you're now no longer saying to LinkedIn, hey, go out to all of these 800,000 people and find people who are ready to buy, because you're passing people through each stage of that natural buyer journey and customer journey, you'll find that the cost per clicks and the cost per conversion when you get to that middle of funnel stage absolutely drops, because you're taking the time to nurture that lead, to build that relationship, but to most importantly qualify people at the front end so that you're only targeting people with that conversion campaign based on people who are interested in what you have to say and what you're talking about, or maybe they've resonated with a certain pain point that you've put out there in that initial video. Now this is by no means the only kind of campaign structure you can set up, but if you are in the B2B space or you're selling something with a relatively long buying cycle, it is really important to be mindful of creating this campaign structure, because most people, if you just stick an ad in front of them that says, hey, come book a demo, come buy our product, come get a demo on this, they're just simply not going to care, because people are now more immune to ads than ever, right? They know when they see an ad, they know when they see something that feels salesy. Whereas if you can meet them up front, again, by giving them value, meeting them where they're at, talking about things that they actually care about, instead of just going in and putting your product or service in their face, you're going to do a much better job at then actually being able to convert them later down the line. Now, if you're wondering how a bottom of funnel campaign might look, let's say, for example, in the middle of funnel, we were driving people toward a book a demo page, for example. Maybe we're getting them to download a particular lead magnet, a resource, sign up to a webinar. The bottom of funnel might then be case studies, testimonials. So these things where, okay, people are now aware of our product, but they still haven't signed up, they still haven't bought. What can we show them that's going to nudge them over the line? So in bottom of funnel campaigns, this is where we'd be retargeting people who have maybe come through to a book a demo page, they've attended a webinar, but they still haven't signed up. So this is where we're going to be thinking about, you know, again, showing that social proof, showing the impact that we can have in these people's lives. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of the overall campaign structure and the strategy side that you want to think about when you're creating these campaigns. Again, there are lots of different objectives and campaign types that you can use. For example, the middle of funnel campaign, instead of being book a demo on your website, maybe again, you want to have a particular resource like a checklist or something that you're using a lead gen form for people to fill out. Right? So it's really going to vary, and the campaign strategy is kind of outside the scope of this video, but I just wanted to get you thinking about this so you can really think through, okay, how can we pre-qualify people at the front end to make sure that our cost per acquisition and cost per click is going to come down as much as possible. To give you another example, HubSpot are a company who do this very, very well across their campaigns on all channels, in that they're really thinking about how do we target people based on, you know, what they're interested in. So HubSpot, if you don't know, is a CRM platform. Okay, so they have multiple different users, from customer service managers to sales managers to marketing managers. Now, if they're running a campaign to marketing managers, their top of funnel content might look like, you know, it might be a video that says the new way to do B2B marketing in 2022. So it's going to grab my attention as a marketing manager because they're meeting me where I'm at. Now notice they're not talking anything about HubSpot at this stage. They're just meeting me where I'm at. But what I'm doing by watching that video is I'm raising my hand and saying, yeah, I'm interested in learning more about the B2B marketing strategies. Now they could then retarget people who have watched 50% or more of that video with a resource that breaks down, you know, the most successful marketing strategies we've seen in 2022. And that could then be a lead gen form that I opt in for. I would then go into their email list. They would then be sending me email campaigns to gradually nurture me over time. They can then retarget me with a video about, you know, why the smartest B2B marketers use HubSpot for their lead generation, with case studies and things like that at the bottom of the funnel. And you'll start to see, by having this kind of campaign structure, this is what's going to allow you to get the best quality of leads, to pre-qualify those leads, to reduce your costs at each stage of the funnel, and also to make sure that you're really building that trust and relationship with buyers, which is more important than ever in a market that is more saturated than ever. Now, before we wrap up, I just want to show you how you can start seeing some of the ads that your competitors are running. So if you go through to any company page on LinkedIn and you click on the post section, you can then, at the top filters here, you've then got ads. So this will then show you any ads that your competitors are running. Now, obviously HubSpot, huge company, you know, billions in revenue. So they are running probably thousands of ads. So you'll see a huge list here. You know, different languages, different countries. LinkedIn isn't at the stage like with Facebook Ads Library where you can filter based on country yet, but it can be useful just to see what your competitors are up to. But just bear in mind with this that what you don't know is how well these ads are doing, and you also don't know the configuration of these ads, right? So we don't know what their campaign objective is here. We don't know the audience that they're targeting with these. So there are certain limitations to this, but it can be useful just to see the kind of approaches that some of your competitors are taking, to see, you know, what ideas you might be able to pull from it, what inspiration you might be able to pull. So you'll see with LinkedIn here, they've actually got a webinar which is driving people through to a dedicated landing page. And if we come down a bit further, this is actually in a different language, but you'll see this is an example of a lead gen form, right? So this is like a guide, a marketing report of some sort. So if I click on this, this is an example of where it's pre-populated my details, and then they've got some custom fields here where they're asking me to put in certain information. So it's just making it very easy for me to convert because it's native to the platform. Whereas with this one, the webinar, because it's slightly higher commitment, and because, you know, maybe they're looking to kind of sell people on the benefits of this webinar, they're sending people straight through to a page where I sign up on this page directly. Okay. So there you have it, guys. I really hope this video has been useful and helps you set up your initial ad campaigns or just get better results from your LinkedIn advertising campaigns. If there's a particular section of this video that you're struggling with or you'd like a bit of a deeper dive into, be sure to leave a comment below and let me know, and I'll look at doing a potential follow-up video to this one, diving into some of these strategies or some of the sections of this in a bit more detail. And if you want to see more content like this on a weekly basis, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.